Now, for me, I come to this from the activist side, and about 10 years ago, when I was president of the Sierra Club, I flew repeatedly into New Orleans to meet with the mayor and the city council to talk about rebuilding the levees and restoring the wetlands. And I remember flying in one time to meet with the mayor, and as I flew in, there was a fire. I thought I could see the water treatment plant on fire. So I figured, okay, the mayor's going to cancel my meeting. So I rushed there because I figured it'll be shortened or whatever. And I go, oh, Mr. Mayor, I know you have to cancel this because your water treatment plant's on fire. And he said, that type of stuff happens all the time here. It should have been a hint to me. So I did my plea. I put sponge. He has a beautiful ornate office, literally about half the size of this room. I put sponges all over his desk. And then I grabbed a cup of water and said, these sponges are the wetlands. And when a storm comes, I poured the water's soaked up in the sponges, the wetlands soak it up. And if we take away half the sponges, because we've destroyed about half of our wetlands in the US in the last 100 years, and I take away half the sponges, and we have climate change as we know it's happening, which is increasing the severity of storms. So I took a pitcher of water this time. This is what will happen. And I poured the pitcher on the sponge, and water goes everywhere. Aides are running around. I'm like, is this water? It was a great, tactic, right? And the mayor seemed impressed. He gave me a key to the city. Big, chunky thing. And kind of showed me the door, and I walked out. And I thought, God, I got a key to the city. I hadn't convinced anyone. And I hadn't been able to actually make an argument very effectively that would explain not just the potential environmental loss to New Orleans, not just the potential of a storm, but actually what would actually happen. And of course, that failure and the failure of all of us to get the message across became clear in 2005 when Katrina hit in August. Category 5 hurricane that we all knew was coming. 1,800 people killed. And there's a point where the old tricks don't work. Where as passionate or as loud or as angry as we can be, the steps won't work unless we find a new way of convincing leaders that there has to be a change. And for me, that was the signal of what I had understood to be a death of environmentalism, a death of the type of environmental activism that was so effective in the 1970s, where in a very short period of time after that first Earth Day in 1970, we passed the Clean Air Act, the Clean Water Act, the Endangered Species Act, the National Environmental Protection Act, the fundamental pieces, the building blocks of environmental protection that actually clean the air in our cities. It cleaned the water in our rivers and streams that made the country livable. But we had failed to build an infrastructure and ideology that would solve the larger looming challenge of climate change. And what I would submit to you is that engaging the corporate sector and engaging people as consumers today is the only way we're going to add to the work that will happen in the civic sector, that will add to the work that will happen in the governmental sector. Without that, we're not going to be able to achieve the level of motion that we need right now. So in the business sector, if you actually go to look at what the mental model of business is today, you don't have to go past Boulder. You can go to Jim Collins' books, which Hunter mentioned. Has anyone ever read Built to Last? Good to Great? Actually, great. I don't mean to. They're actually very interesting books, and I recommend them, but it's probably not your mental model then, which is good. If you go to most Fortune 500 companies and you ask mid-level managers the books they have on their shelf, there's those two books. And what Built to Last did is it looked at, or Good to Great, Built to Last looked at 18 companies that had successive leaders that had outperformed the S&P 500 for more than 50 years, that had been highly regarded in their in their fields, the best companies in the United States, the best companies in the world, and said, well, how did they become this way, and how could we create more companies like that? And this was a book that came out in 1994. And of those 18 companies, about 6 of them have since kind of fallen off the tracks. Companies like Citigroup, companies like Ford, companies that had failed to actually change and react. And he wrote another book called Good to Great, looking at middling companies, companies that hadn't been doing so well, they were kind of mediocre and started becoming great companies. He said, well, how did that happen? And if you look at the top performing company in that book, does anyone know what it was? It was Circuit City, which is now bankrupt. The second one was Fannie Mae. And what I'll suggest to you is that the reason why these companies have had such fall-offs is that they set these internal business goals as if business could work without being connected to society, as if business could work without being connected to the type of ecological threats that businesses face. And the type of business that will survive now, the type of business that will survive today, is intimately connected with changes in society, technology, and natural human resources. And that type of business now is setting something that I would call a North Star goal. A BHAG was a big, hairy, audacious goal. The idea is choose something that you can hit in 30 years. And the BHAGs are like, we're going to be number 1 or number 2 in our industry within a decade. We're going to be the most profitable widget maker in our segment in 5 years. We're going to go capture market share. They're internal, large goals that are supposed to integrate and accelerate change in the company. And what I'm seeing now is the setting of what we might call North Star goals. Goals that are actually a little, sometimes maybe even farther away, but somewhere between 5 and 15 years away. Goals that connect to the core of the business, and goals that actually have a connection to solving a global human challenge. And what do some of these look like? So, Walmart made a North Star goal, or 3 goals. 1, to be powered 100% by renewable energy. 2, to produce 0 waste. And 3, to sell only basically green products on their shelves. Now, they didn't know exactly how they would do it, but they used that to motivate people inside the company, to communicate to their suppliers, and to reinvigorate their culture inside the organization. Xerox made a goal in 2000 of trying to make its products 100% recyclable or remanufacturable. Today, Xerox machines that you buy are 91% recycled. Toyota has made a goal of making cars that clean the air as they drive and never crash. I actually brought a spot that our office in our Saatchi Los Angeles office created for the new Prius, which I thought might be fun to see. That's queued up.
There's a reason for the sunshine sky, and there's a reason why I'm feeling so high. Must be the season.
You get more power and more space. The world gets fewer smog-forming emissions. The 3rd generation Prius. It's harmony between man, nature, and machine.